Hi guys, it's Jakey here. Real quick, I'll try and get through this as quickly as possible to get onto the chapter. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly appreciate it. I know I say it a lot, but I mean it every single time. Thank you for all your support and the love and the understanding. I finally unlocked community posts. That was kind of the main goal after I realized how much this channel was growing, I guess. And so yeah, if you guys need updates on what's going on within the week of recording, or if I can't record, or if something's come up, go ahead and check community posts every once in a while because I will update you guys there. I will still be updating Twitter, of course, if you guys prefer Twitter, so no worries there. But I know that a lot of people kind of just stayed on YouTube, so definitely I will focus more on YouTube posts than the Twitter ones. But Twitter will still be updated every once in a while as well. And what else was I going to say? I think that was it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to record next week. I am hoping to. My work schedule doesn't seem that full, so I am hoping for a Friday video next week as well. If not, I'll keep you updated on community posts and Twitter. And last but not least, of course, as you know, I will have the story links down in the description below. Please go check it out. The story is available on Tumblr, Archive of Our Own, Quotev, and Wattpad. If you prefer any of those 4 platforms, go ahead and check it out. Let the author know that you are loving this story. She just recently posted chapter 41, the latest chapter. Go read. It was amazing, and I always cry because I want these two people to be happy. The listener and Bakugou. But yeah, so I think that's it. I'm just kind of scrambling right now because I don't want this to be too long. I think that's all. So yeah, love you guys. Enjoy chapter 12. In the darkness hummed a warmth, a comfort. A new type of familiarity that drew him in like a cat to the spot warmed by the sun near the window. It eased the ache in his chest. His breathing became less shallow, and his hands stopped trembling as the cold isolation was swept away by the glowing embers of your laughter. The crack of rumbling thunder outside woke Bakugou up to the now familiar and dimly lit living room of your apartment. Rain pelted the roof and windows. Dark clouds swirled overhead and unseen, and a shock of lightning cast ominous shadows of the windswept trees outside onto the walls. It was some of the best sleep he'd had since arriving here. Another roar matched the tempo of his breath as he sighed through his nose and blinked himself awake. Everything started flooding back into his mind from the previous night. Your confession, the nervous trembling in your voice as you waited for his answer, the way you smiled into his kiss. Just the thought of it made his pulse hum under his skin. That really happened, huh? Bakugou whispered to himself as he listened to the rain outside. Despite falling asleep with a massive weight lifted off his chest at the lack of mental and emotional turmoil, he guiltily and selfishly wondered what would happen now that he had one full day with you. A day without holding back, a day to understand you through a new perspective, a day where he could hold you again and maybe act less fucking awkward about it. Bakugou didn't date. It all seemed so stupid and pointless while focused on hero work where his life was on the line every day. Most people saw him as a public figure anyway, nothing more than a villain-destroying machine looping through cable news stations, or a celebrity too wrapped up in fame and work to give a shit about anything else. They swarmed him for autographs and photo opportunities. No one ever fucking asked him if he'd had a miserable day or not besides his friends. At the beginning of his hero career after graduating from UA, he'd gotten wrapped up with a fan or two, their enthusiasm and flattery stroking his young ego. But afterward, it felt supremely unsatisfying and he didn't understand what the fuss was about. So he gave up for a few years before trying again, but ultimately went right back to focusing on himself and his dream of becoming the #1 hero without distractions. Kirishima set him up on dates, but he saw right through the fake acting and pathetic flattery. He chalked it up to people wanting him for superficial reasons: fame, money, bragging rights. After that, nothing ever went past a first date, and the last one he'd endured was over 3 years ago. Bakugou wasn't sure how the hell to categorize what the two of you had for now, but he'd done enough overthinking for 1 week and instead focused his eyes on your closed bedroom door as he sat up from the couch. He silently wondered if his inexperience would become obvious to you if more time passed, but if he hadn't fucked up so far, then he must have been doing something right. He'd roll with his intuition like he normally did. If today was his last day here, why hold back if it was just the two of you? At that exact moment, another angry roar of thunder and crack of lightning boomed outside, and he heard a yelp from behind your door and the distinct thud of someone falling, presumably onto the floor.
Ugh, this early.
Bakugou groaned as he stood up and stretched before he walked over to your door and knocked.
You okay?
He asked. You'd managed not to trip over your words or feet the previous day, so it only made sense that you fixed that trend first thing in the morning.
Hi.
He heard you answer, while obviously fumbling around where he couldn't see. After a minute, you opened the door, a tangle of bedmussed hair that he found surprisingly cute framing your sleepy face. Bakugou felt an odd urge to kiss you good morning, just for the hell of it, but paused when he noticed you wince at another loud boom of thunder and remembered how you reacted during the last big storm.
Ohio,
he said instead, leaning against your doorframe as the phone in your hand translated. Morning, you mirrored as you tried not to melt at that handsome, sleepy smile of his. You'd woken up in the shittiest of ways as your left shoulder met the floor, but knowing Bakugou was still here and you'd have at least one entire day with him swept away the frustration. To your surprise, Bakugou started slowly leaning down towards your face for what you assumed was a kiss. As much as you absolutely wanted to return it, more than anything really, you panicked and clamped a hand over his mouth, the warm breath of his nose ghosting over your fingers as his eyes went wide with an obviously silent question. Sorry, let me just brush my teeth first. The thought of kissing him with morning breath overwhelmed the common-sense thought that he wouldn't care, so instead, you stood on your tiptoes and placed a light peck on his cheek before scooting past him into the bathroom. After thoroughly scrubbing your teeth and swishing mouthwash around until you were sure he'd smell nothing except the sharp sting of mint, you walked back out to find him staring through the blinds of your window. Your footsteps made him turn, the cool light from outside ghosting over his silhouette before he walked towards you.
I'm making breakfast. No arguing,
he said, with a matter-of-fact tone before disappearing into the bathroom himself. Instead of rummaging through the kitchen to disobey him just to savor the look on his face, you settled for a glass of juice and wondered what to do for the day. As long as it was raining, any outdoor activities were out, but maybe Bakugou wouldn't mind spending a lazy day inside. When Bakugou came back out, you felt ready to give him a proper good morning kiss this time. You bit your lip, your eyes trained on him, as he walked around the counter and stood in front of you almost expectantly.
Well,
he asked, a small smile playing on his lips and a curious glisten in his eyes. Without hesitating, you met him halfway for a short and chaste kiss. The feeling of elation hadn't dissipated since the previous night, and it was over far too soon for your liking when he turned away to start pulling things out of the fridge. Shit, he's smooth. You remembered that you needed to wash clothes, and cleared your throat to speak since he'd practically taken your breath away with that small gesture. I'm going to shower and then wash clothes. Thanks for making breakfast. Bakugou hummed in acknowledgement as you headed into your bedroom to pull out a clean outfit before marching past him, making brief eye contact, and disappearing around the corner. Maybe it was the idea of you now being physically close to Bakugou, but you took extra care in the shower to make sure you were squeaky clean. Marveling once more at the thought of one more day with him, one day with him as someone you could kiss on the mouth. You couldn't help but sing. You felt light and happy, a sappy grin plastered on your face that would be difficult to rid yourself of if things kept up like this for the entire day. The delicious smell of breakfast filled your nose as you walked out after your shower, drool already pooling under your tongue. You dropped your pajamas into the washer before walking over to lean on the other side of the counter, phone in hand. "It smells so good. Where did you learn to cook?" you asked, while unashamedly staring at his toned shoulders and arms. Bakugou pulled a couple of plates down from the cabinet before turning to you, your eyes quickly shifting focus up to his face.
The only way my mom would let me play with knives as a kid was if I helped her cook. Plus, someone dared to say I was shit at it, so on principle I had to prove them wrong.
He watched your mouth fall open in obvious shock before you covered it with your hands to stifle a laugh. Your giggling reminded him of his dream, and he couldn't help but grin like an idiot as he turned back around to portion out the food.
Today's going to be a good day,
he thought. Oh my god, somehow I'm not surprised, but I'm reaping the benefits of your kitchen skills, so I'm certainly not complaining. Bakugou set both plates on the kitchen table before seating himself down in the chair he normally took as his own. While you pulled out your own chair, Bakugou decided to ask a question that hadn't felt right to ask until now.
Do you ever sing in front of people?
He watched you pause stiffly before slowly taking your seat, obvious embarrassment written across your face. "Oh, you can hear me?" His eyebrows shot up, not believing that you didn't know.
You aren't exactly whispering, and the apartment is small. Sound carries well.
A tinge of pink spread across your nose as you pushed around the food on your plate. "I didn't realize. I guess I got used to being the only one here," you admitted. One corner of Bakugou's mouth quirked up into a small smile at how shy you suddenly became. "Wait, how big is your place where you live if you think this is small?" Bakugou looked around for a second to do some mental math.
At least twice this big. I live in a high-security building with other heroes. Also, don't change the subject. You don't suck at singing. Don't know why you're embarrassed,
he said with challenge in his eyes. Apparently, that small compliment made you sink even further down into your chair to avoid his scrutiny. I guess I'm just not used to people hearing me, much less saying I'm any good at it." You finally took a bite of food, but he didn't miss the way your eyes lit up at his words, or the food, or maybe both. "So, I guess that answers your question. No, I don't really sing in front of people." Observing this hesitancy to compliment yourself spurred him on.
Have some confidence. Play to your strengths. You'd probably kick ass at something as ridiculous as karaoke.
At his admission, you turned to stare at him, those honest eyes of yours almost inescapable. If it was this simple to make you happy, then he could oblige without even trying. Bakugou used to be terrible at admitting the strong points of others, but he'd gotten a handle on his shortcomings as he grew older. "You really think so?" He couldn't lie even if he wanted to, not when you looked at him as you did now.
Why would I lie?
Bakugou asked. You relaxed in your chair as you took another bite of food. "Well, what about you? Have you ever done karaoke? I imagine it's way more popular in Japan than it is here." He couldn't help but snicker as memories shot to the front of his brain.
Yeah, a few times. Kirishima and Kaminari drag me along so they can look like idiots on stage, and I get blackmail material.
His stories of home always drew you in as though you vicariously lived through his own nostalgia. "And what about you? Do you sing?" Without hesitation, he said,
"Fuck no."
His quick answer made you laugh, and he just shook his head in disbelief of just how damn comfortable he was right now, doing something as domestic as eating breakfast with you. You decided it was best not to comment on how mild the food tasted, and instead savored the complimenting flavors and skillful cooking. The remainder of breakfast felt light and easy, both of you falling into easy conversation. The fact that Bakugou had heard you singing at least once through the bathroom made you panic. but praise from him was something to savor, and your bashfulness eventually fell away. When both of you were done eating, you moved to take the plates away, but Bakugou grabbed them up with his quick reflexes. "Hey, you cooked so I can clean up, that's fair." He just scoffed while placing the dishes in the sink and turning back towards you.
Is it? You've given me food, shelter, and everything I wouldn't have otherwise. I feel like a useless freeloader if I don't help out somehow, so deal with it.
You molded over while staring at him. It made perfect sense that someone as self-reliant as Bakugou would hate the idea of being taken care of, even if he didn't really have a choice in the matter. His stubbornness was something to behold, but you could be stubborn too. "I've said it before. I promise I don't mind helping with any of that stuff, but if you want to do chores, I won't complain," you said, sticking your tongue out playfully before quickly reeling it back in. With a glint of mischief in his eyes, Bakugou strode over to you with a determined swagger in his step that made you gulp. Uh-oh? Before you could move away, he swooped down and pressed his lips to yours in something more forceful than just a peck this time. It promptly made you swallow your tongue, taking you by surprise. When he pulled away with that stupidly handsome smirk of his, you felt more than a little dazed and breathless. You'd never admit that openly, though. His ego did not need any more stroking.
Go sit down. I'll do the dishes.
Bakugou's voice was low and slightly husky, sending shivers down your spine in a way that made you want to melt right into the floor. Instead, you nodded weakly and sat on the couch, your brain fried because of this sudden, massive uptick in bold affection. Glancing back towards the kitchen, Bakugou smiled in a smug, yet relaxed way, and you felt ecstatic to know you were the cause. Light thunder echoed outside and snapped you out of whatever haze-filled stupor you sunk into after that kiss. What was I doing? Oh, laundry, right. Hopping off the couch, you gave Bakugou a shy smile as you walked back into your room to gather up your things, sorting through to find whatever needed scrubbing. You assumed since Bakugou now knew how to wash his own clothes that the same mishap with seeing his underwear wouldn't happen a second time. Concentrating on stuffing your things into the washer and avoiding the man behind you scrubbing dishes was tougher than you realized, especially from the soft and memorable morning you'd had so far. Once that chore was underway, you plopped back down onto the couch with your game controller to see if you wanted to be competitive in a way that had nothing to do with climbing fake rocks. Bakugou walked over and looked between the controller in your hand and the TV.
You want to get your ass kicked that badly? Let me shower first.
Your phone perched on the arm of the couch translated his snarky comment. "We'll see who loses," you called out as he walked away towards the bathroom, vaguely aware of your eyes on him as the two of you stole glances at each other, as if memorizing and savoring every stupid laugh and smile. Soaking up the hot steam from your shower, he relaxed as the water and the smell of soap gradually woke him up properly. What had you called him last night?
Crazy hot.
Bakugou wasn't a stranger to people staring, and with parents working in the fashion industry, he took at least a bit of pride in how he looked, but coming from you, it made him snicker as suds spun down the drain at his feet.
Would she pass out if I walked out shirtless? Probably, or close to it.
Although the mental image of your burning face amused him immensely, he figured pushing your buttons too quickly might not end well. Plus, you'd already proven your own deviant behavior, so who knew what kind of retaliation you'd come up with when his guard was down. He warmed up his hands with his quirk, not enough to light off sparks, but enough to make them glow, and ran his fingers through his hair to quicken the drying process. After nearly 2 weeks, it had grown a bit, but wasn't long enough to annoy him just yet. Turning around, he stopped, brushed his teeth again for good measure, and walked out into the living room. This routine was unfamiliar, but he didn't mind so much. Bakugou noticed you concentrating fully on the game you were playing, brows furrowed as your fingers moved rapidly over the worn buttons of the controller before a large "You lose" blinked across the screen. Judging by your angry mumbling, this wasn't your first loss. It reminded him of how you acted while driving. He silently watched you from behind the couch as you started another match and found it kind of adorable when you pouted if things didn't go your way. How you had turned him into such a fucking sap in such a short amount of time, he had no idea. But he wasn't about to let the day go to waste dwelling on it. When you finally won, you tossed the controller onto the couch and jumped up, screaming, "Fucking finally! God!" Your sudden outburst brought a laugh out of him if nothing else. "You see that, Bakugou? I won," you said while crossing your arms with pride.
How many times did you lose, though?
Bakugou retorted before easily hopping over the back of the couch to land on the cushion. You stared at him before clearing your throat and sitting down in your previous spot. Waving your hand in the air dismissively, you turned to him. A vague number of times. Don't exactly recall, doesn't matter. There was no effort on your part to keep any noticeable distance between the two of you now, a subtle detail that he accepted for now.
Can you beat me, though?
He asked with a smug grin. The gears turning in your head were obvious, but you owned up to his challenge despite knowing he would, in all likelihood, win. Bakugou looked composed and at ease. After every consecutive defeat he lodged against your character, you huffed and mashed the controller buttons with unnecessary force. You wanted to beat him at least once to wipe that smug grin off his face, and wondered if there was a way to distract him just long enough to kick his character off the edge of the map. Maybe, "Oh, I'm evil, but will it work?" As his character closed in, ready to launch one of those stupidly long combo attacks to drain half your health in one go, you knew it was now or never. With how close the two of you sat, it made it almost too easy to reach over and attempt to tickle him in the side right under his arm. His shocked laughter, followed by a stream of curses, bought you just enough time to unceremoniously boot Bakugou's character right off the map and into oblivion. You were so shocked that your stupid plan actually worked, and Bakugou was so shocked that you'd actually pulled such a stunt just to win, that you both stared at the screen as "Player 1, Winner," flashed in bright gold letters. "I won! I won! Eat that!" When you blinked yourself out of your stupor, you jumped up from the couch and pointed right in Bakugou's twitching face. It was torn between a mixture of amused and pissed.
"Resorting to cheating, huh?"
he practically growled as you crossed your arms. "Maybe, but it worked, didn't it?" You stuck your tongue out at him before remembering what happened after breakfast. When Bakugou set down his controller in an ominously slow manner, you felt your fight or flight instinct kick in, snatched your phone, and bolted towards the bathroom for safety. "Bye!" You slid across the floor as quickly as you could manage as you heard Bakugou yell behind you and bolt off the couch hot on your tail. Managing to slam the bathroom door in his face, you locked it while giggling like a maniac at the fact that you just tickled Bakugou and it fucking worked. Holy shit. You saw the handle jiggle as he tried to open it from the other side. With your ear up against the door, you could hear his angry muttering as you tried not to double over from your own laughter.
"Doorを開けろ!"
he yelled. You had no idea what he said since his voice was too muffled by the door for your phone to translate, but you took a wild guess. "No way! You're just a sore loser!" The door handle stilled as a haunting silence came from the other, until you heard the familiar popping of his quirk. You could practically see the devious grin plastered on his face, thirsty for vengeance. "No, he wouldn't," you whispered with realization. "Don't you dare blow up this door!" Bakugou repeated his words from before, his tone lower with the biting edge of a snake about to strike. "Do you know how much my security deposit was for this place? How do I explain a blasted door to maintenance?" You asked desperately while trying to figure out what to do. If you opened the door, you were doomed. If you didn't open the door, you were still doomed. It seemed ridiculous that he'd actually cause property damage, but his pride was not something to wound without consequence. You looked around the bathroom for anything that might save you. Toothbrush? No, useless. Soap? Fragrant, but impractical. plunger? Gross. Shit. Sufficiently trapped with the knowledge that no matter what, Bakugou would get his revenge, you groaned in defeat. The popping on the other side of the door grew louder before you slowly unlocked the door with a click while silently praying for mercy. As soon as you cracked open the door, a piercing red eye glowing like a lump of burning coal stared down at you, and before you could react, his hand reached through the gap, quick as lightning, and grabbed your wrist so you couldn't slam it closed again. Bakugou opened the door and stepped into the cold fluorescent bathroom light with the exact grin you imagined. He backed you up against the wall, effectively trapping you and blocking your only exit. Your breath caught in your throat as your mind flashed suddenly with the realization of how incredibly hot it felt to be pinned up against a wall with Bakugou staring down at you hungrily.
Oh, sorry?
You squeaked out like a cornered animal. Bakugou just clicked his tongue at your feeble attempt at an apology. Cheating at the game by tickling him of all things was the last thing he expected, but he'd be damned if he let you get away with it.
Sorry isn't gonna cut it. Maybe you know the saying. An eye for an eye.
He let his voice drop low, his tone rough as the pad of his thumb felt the pulse beating rapidly under the skin of your wrist. He had you exactly where he wanted you.
Maybe?
Your eyes were blown wide and voice laced with nervousness. He'd never hurt you, but he could even the playing field. It was easy to grab up your other wrist and hold them over your head against the wall with one of his hands. Now truly defenseless, his mouth twitched once more before he went in with his own tickle barrage, fingers skimming your sides and under your arms. It was the first time he'd ever tickled anyone, truth be told. But by how you started screeching and struggling, Bakugou knew he was doing something right.
I'm sorry!
You gasped between bursts of laughter, Bakugou's hands still tight around your wrists as your face went red and tears began to pool at the corner of your eyes. Eventually, you let your body go limp as your knees gave out and you dragged yourself to the floor while still giggling as you attempted to catch your breath. Bakugou let go of your hands, figuring that you'd had enough torture for the time being. Looking down at you, spent from laughter, your chest heaving and cheeks ruddy, made Bakugou's eyes flash darkly. He swallowed the lump in his throat as his mind wandered into dangerous territory. Composing himself quickly, he knelt down to your level as you pulled your head up to wipe away a stray tear from your sparkling eyes. As you opened your mouth to talk, lips plump and moist from biting them in a futile attempt at remaining quiet during his onslaught, Bakugou lunged forward on instinct and covered your mouth with his in a searing kiss full of needy energy. His left hand pressed up against the wall next to your head, while the other gripped uselessly at the cold bathroom tile for traction. Your hitching breath ghosted over his face through your nose. You jumped at first from the abrupt touch, but it took you no time to relax under him, sandwiched between Bakugou and the wall behind you. You limply dropped your phone in your lap as your hands came up to weave through his softly textured hair. He usually ran warmer than most due to his quirk, but this was a completely different area code of hot, honestly. His mouth moved against yours hungrily, devouring every small sound you made that ran down his throat and into his chest. Occasionally, your teeth bumped into his, but luckily, you didn't seem to care that he probably seemed well out of practice when it came to this type of thing. Bakugou saw stars last night, but now, explosive fireworks bloomed behind his eyes as he felt your fingers scrape against his scalp, goosebumps shivering across his skin. Eventually, he had to pull away to breathe, his teeth tugging at your bottom lip before inching away. The two of you panted heavily, eyes blown out and dark. The atmosphere in the bathroom turned heavier than it had ever been between the two of you in a matter of seconds. You licked your lips subconsciously, Bakugou's eyes following the action. It made you want to close the small distance between you, and it seemed like he'd read your mind as he leaned in again, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat, when your phone rang out from your lap, startling both of you with a jump. Glancing down, you saw it was your mother. Perfect timing, Mom, you thought. Letting go of Bakugou's hair, you reached down to grab your phone. Okasan, you mumbled, the little bit of common Japanese you knew coming to you in the moment. He nodded, ran a hand down his face, and stood up from the bathroom floor before extending a hand to help you up to your feet. Wordlessly, the two of you exited the bathroom as you bolted into your room, your fingers swiping to answer the call before it went to voicemail. Hey, Mom! You were going to need a bit of distance to cool off after what just transpired. As soon as Bakugou saw your bedroom door close, he promptly stuck his head in your freezer, his foot tapping rapidly on the floor in an attempt to calm the hell down after that little makeout session. You, on the other hand, took a deep breath in the safety of your room as your mother spoke.
Honey, are you all right? You're breathing hard.
Lie through your teeth. I got done working out. Just trying to stay healthy, you know? Your awkward laugh at the end probably didn't help things, but you knew your face was burning, and there was nothing you could do about it. Your mother hummed on the other side, keen to your bullshit after so many years.
All right.
She didn't sound convinced.
What have you been up to? I know you were having a bit of a dilemma last week and wanted to see if you were able to figure things out.
Oh, that. You gathered up your thoughts quickly to remain focused. Actually, I kind of followed your advice.
Which part?
Amusement laced your mother's voice, knowing her words had rung true. I took a leap of faith, you admitted, while smiling to yourself thinking about Bakugou. She let out a curious huff on the other end of the line.
Well, you don't sound upset, so how did it work out for you?
I told the guy I liked that I liked him, and, he likes me back. You felt like a giddy teenager telling your mom about your crush and boy problems, but you were too happy that everything worked out for the best to care. He isn't quite sure when he has to leave, but I guess we both figured that it was now or never.
Oh, baby, that's wonderful. Tell me, have you kissed him yet? Is he polite to you? Are there any photos of this boy I can see?
Her prying questions made you laugh as you fell onto your bed. Oh my god, you sound just like my friend when I told her about him. And yes, we've kissed a couple of times. Heat flooded your face thinking back to just a few minutes ago in the bathroom, but you'd never admit that out loud. I don't have any pictures, no. I'd probably need to butter him up to get him to take one. Bakugou didn't really seem like the type of person who enjoyed taking pictures, but having just one to keep would be worth any begging.
Sounds a bit like your father, honestly. But baby, you sound so much happier now, and even if it's temporary, I think these are the moments to cherish. It would have been awful wondering, what if, I think. I know you, and it would have driven you crazy,
she said with a small chuckle. You hated to admit it, but your mom really did know you best. Yeah, I know. I think he sort of came to the same conclusion. It still felt a bit like a dream, honestly. Bakugou Katsuki made out with you on your bathroom floor. You could make him smile and laugh. You suppressed a giggle to keep your mom from taunting you too much.
Try and get me a picture. Is he cute?
You could picture the prying expression of your mother through the phone. Glancing over your shoulder to double-check that the door was closed, you whispered, Mom, he's the hottest guy I've ever met. No lie, he's a solid 10. Wait, no, 20. She nearly gasped on the other end, and you buried your face in your pillow.
Ooh, how exciting! Well, be careful. I'm still your mother. Use protection.
You interrupted her with a startled yelp at her implication. Mom, oh my god, don't say that!
Oh, hush. I know you're smart, but I have to say it anyway.
And just after you managed to calm down, one sentence sent you reeling back into embarrassment. Conversation flowed for a few more minutes after your mom stopped teasing you on the other end.
Well, I'll let you go. Is it raining over there? We might get some here tonight.
Walking over to your bedroom window, you peeked out of the blinds and watched raindrops pour down outside, the sky dark and gloomy overhead. Yeah, looks like it'll stick around a while.
Alrighty, be safe. Love you.
Love you too. With that, you hung up and let out a sigh of relief. Mom, why you gotta be so nosy? You made sure you were composed before opening up your door to find Bakugou a few feet away staring out into the parking lot outside through the blinds. Letting his hand drop, he looked over to you. Hey, you said to break the silence marred only by the rain outside while pulling up the translator.
You said that was your mom?
He asked, before taking a sip of water from the glass he held. Water sounded exceptionally refreshing at that moment. You nodded and leaned against your doorframe. Yeah, she likes to check in every once in a while, make sure I'm alive. Typical mom stuff, I guess. Bakugou hummed in response before you asked a curious question. What about your mom? What's she like? Bakugou scoffed before turning back towards the window.
Nosy old hag.
Your jaw dropped and brow furrowed as the phone translated. Excuse me? Apparently, you'd assumed Bakugou meant you and not his mother, making him choke on his water as his eyes widened.
No. Fuck. My mom is the hag, not you. She's too much like me, to be honest. Not sure if that's always a good thing.
Bakugou and his mother had grown up with a bizarre relationship that, looking back, probably wasn't the healthiest. Once he understood Todoroki's childhood trauma, really understood it and what it meant, Bakugou looked at his own relationship with his mother in a different light. They still talked and visited each other during the small gaps in hero work when he had a day off, but for the most part, Bakugou made his own path for himself, separate from his parents. If it fell into some of that self-care bullshit that people talked about, he'd take it. You didn't need to know any of that, though. Parents tend to raise their kids in their own image. You don't seem all that bad to me, so... You shrugged and gave him a soft smile. I bet she misses you, though. He suddenly felt the need to move, to rid himself of the stillness bottling itself up in his muscles. His feet carried him into the kitchen to lean against the counter, more on instinct than anything else. You followed not far behind.
I'm sure she's yelled at someone by now about it. She's stubborn and loud, mostly.
Yeah, that does sound like you. You quipped before he reached over and flicked you on the nose. Hey!
Smartass.
He teased. The air around the two of you felt very different now from how it did in the bathroom, heat gone and replaced with a bizarre sense of calm. Bakugou normally disliked rain and chilly weather, far preferring spring and summer, but so long as he was inside, the gentle pitter-patter on the roof didn't bother him so much. Having you around might have contributed to that feeling. Just a bit. The roller coaster of the past couple of days had distracted him from thinking of home and his situation, but talking about his mom reminded him harshly of what he should be focused on, and a pang of guilt flashed across his face for a moment. Should he really be happy right now? Enjoying his time here so long as he remains stuck? Shouldn't he? Hey. Your voice snapped him out of his spiraling daze. Bakugou looked up to see a slight look of concern on your face as you gestured over to the couch. He set his empty glass on the counter and followed you more on reflex than anything, sitting next to you with his back facing the window outside. Without words, the two of you settled with you leaned up against his chest, one of his legs dangling lazily over the edge, his bare toes tickling the floor. He wasn't used to this, but it somehow felt natural. One of his hands draped loosely around your midsection. Your weight against him made him feel solid and grounded as his mind continued to wander. Bakugou? His chest vibrated as you spoke. I know you miss your home. I'm sure you'll be able to go back soon. Your voice was soft and held a tinge of hesitancy in it, as though bringing up the subject would upset him. Truth be told, maybe he needed to talk about this shit, air it out in the open every once in a while. Who else was he going to talk about it with anyway?
Yeah, I do. I grew up there. My life is there. My career, my dumb friends. I'm a hero there, and being a hero is what I'm good at. It's what I've always wanted to be.
Bakugou did miss his friends, the familiar foods, his apartment, the smells, sounds, beating up villains. He'd never known anything else. Things were calm in this universe, calmer than he'd ever personally experienced back home. Maybe if he turned on the news, it would show him familiar scenes of violence, but despite his anxiety surrounding this whole situation, the tranquility here felt like a long overdue reprieve. Sorry. Your voice was soft despite the stoic robot-like cadence of your phone, which he'd gotten used to by now. He absent-mindedly rubbed circles into the fabric of your shirt with the pad of his thumb.
Don't be. None of this shit is your fault. I just wish I had more information. I feel just as in the dark now as I did a week ago. People back home might know what happened or how to get me back, but maybe they can't reach me. No fucking clue. I have ideas, but that's all they are.
You hummed in time with the gentle roll of thunder outside. Things seemed to have calmed down since the early morning. What kind of ideas? You've told me a few before, but have you thought of anything new? Bakugou lifted his hand from your shirt and held it out, a faint orange glow emanating from his palm, the muscles in his forearms twitching slightly.
Think of quirks like a limb or muscle. If you overextend it, then it needs time to heal. If a quirk is really powerful, then once it becomes overused, it might need more time to return to normal. Over the decades, quirks have become increasingly strong and versatile, but there are always drawbacks. If I overuse my quirk, for example, my arms and hands start to hurt. Rarely happens now from the years of training I've done, though. Whatever quirk sent me here must be very strong. It might be days, weeks, more, before I can go back if it's dependent on something like time.
His voice trailed off at the thought of spending such a long amount of time here without a choice in the matter. Bakugou placed a lot of stake in autonomy, so having his stripped away stung like salt on an open wound. The silence stretched between you both, and you sighed against his chest before replying. Well, if your friends are as smart as they seem from your stories, then I'm sure they'll figure out how to get some information to you soon. He clicked his tongue and rested his chin on top of your head, the two of you leaning against couch cushions.
Collectively, they should be able to figure something out.
Well, either way, let me know if I can do anything to help. I've been told I'm a pretty good listener if you ever want to vent. Of course, you would offer even more to him than you already did. Bakugou just shook his head and sighed. None of this was your responsibility or burden to bear, yet you continued to act selflessly for his sake.
You've done enough already,
Bakugou admitted. It didn't feel like an adequate response. You both remained that way for a while, the quiet interrupted only by the rain outside, downcast, yet still comfortable, both of you lost in your thoughts. Wondering when he might leave felt almost pointless at this stage, so he selfishly resigned himself to enjoying the time he had here to the best of his ability. At minimum, you kept him distracted, which he was wholly grateful for. He felt your even breathing against his chest, a rhythm, a warmth that spread through him despite the chill outside. Everything converged into a potent mix, his eyes fluttering shut and arms still loosely draped around you as it lulled him into sleep. When you awoke, you didn't realize you'd even been asleep. For the first time that day, a bit of sunlight streamed in from the blinds behind you, and listening closely, you heard the soft chirping of birds that had replaced the thunder and rain. As your vision cleared, you felt something sturdy at your back, and warm breath against your hair. Looking down, Bakugou's arm lay limp around your waist, serene, still. He must have fallen asleep too, but you managed to wake up first. You hated the idea of moving from this dreamy spot cuddled up with Bakugou, but Mother Nature called and you had to use the bathroom. Moving as slowly as you could, you managed to untangle yourself from him and ease off the couch, tiptoeing into the bathroom. After finishing your business and washing your hands, you opened the door quietly in anticipation of Bakugou asleep on the couch, but instead, you saw him yawn and stretch in an almost adorably cat-like way. With the sunlight softly cascading into the room, his pale blonde hair looked almost like a glowing halo. It was now early afternoon after that little power nap, and almost right on cue, your stomach rumbled, apparently angry that you hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. You looked up mortified, but Bakugou just stared at you before letting out a single chuckle. He walked close enough to hand you your phone, a sleepy smile on his face. It was almost painful how handsome he was.
I guess you want lunch then.
You cleared your throat and slid into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Yeah, I guess I do. My stomach knows what it wants. Actually, now that it's stopped raining, want to take a walk outside afterwards? He hummed, nodded, and started pulling things out of the fridge for whatever he wanted to make.
Fine with me.
You smiled, before remembering you had wet clothes in the washer. Shit, you mumbled, hoping they didn't start to smell as you hopped over to stuff everything into the dryer with a couple of dryer sheets. You also grabbed your phone charger from your room and plugged it up into the socket under the counter. As Bakugou started cooking, you couldn't help but openly stare at him without reservations. His movements in the kitchen were smooth and oozed confidence. Mesmerizing was one word to use. It was almost surreal to compare this man in front of you to the one who arrived here 12 days ago with his frightening anger and explosions. You wanted to get to know every side of him that he was willing to show. Every once in a while, he'd look up at you and roll his eyes, but never told you to stop staring, which must have been obvious by now.
Enjoying the view?
He asked smugly. You cut your eyes away like a child being caught doing something she shouldn't. No, I'm just bored. You retorted with an overly sarcastic tone that made him click his tongue.
Smartass. Take a damn picture then.
You knew he wasn't serious, but your response stuck to your tongue as a question popped into your head. You pretended to examine your fingernails, fully expecting him to deny you. Would you mind? You asked hesitantly. Bakugou stopped chopping to turn to you with a questioning look.
Mind what?
Taking a picture of you? Wait, no, that came out wrong. Maybe, one together? If you're okay with that. Biting your lip, you looked up to see his eyes widen with surprise, apparently not expecting that explanation.
You want a picture together.
He said it more as a statement than a question. I mean, only if you want. I know not everyone likes their picture taken. The thought of having a keepsake, even just one picture to remember this day, made you hopeful. Bakugou set down the knife and leaned on the counter into your personal space, crimson eyes boring into yours with an amazing amount of scrutiny.
Normally, I hate pictures. The press are vultures who bug the hell out of me and any other hero for an interview or photo opportunity.
You assumed that was his answer and couldn't help but look a bit crestfallen, but he continued, a finger tapping evenly on the counter.
Let me think on it.
That sounded better than a straight no, so you held out hope that with enough buttering up, he might give in. Sure, yeah, of course. After a while, you must have zoned out, scrolling through your phone, when you felt a jab in the ribs and blinked quickly to see him smirking next to you.
How do you manage to go so far into your head like that?
Talent, you said without thinking, your tongue playing behind your teeth, threatening to poke itself out at him again. But you weren't quite ready for whatever retaliation he'd lob your way just yet. Lunch was delicious, but you expected nothing less. You came to two conclusions as to why it wasn't spicy. Either he was truly plotting your untimely demise by setting your mouth on fire when you least expected it, or he was intentionally making your portions milder than his own. Either way, you had no complaints and ate with a bit of an unconscious wiggle, an idiosyncrasy you'd had since you were little. You only wiggled when the food tasted delicious, though. You attempted to argue with him yet again about the damn dishes when the two of you finished eating. You were just as stubborn as he was. Now that he knew at least one weakness of yours, Bakugou reached a hand forward with an ominous glint, making you take a step back. Don't you dare tickle me again. Ugh, fine. Wash the damn dishes then. You turned your nose up at him, but couldn't help but smile while throwing your hands up dramatically. Walking towards your room, you felt his eyes on you, and when you looked over your shoulder, he didn't bother glancing away, shameless in his staring. You had to admit, it made you feel pretty damn good about yourself. When you closed the door to your room, Bakugou ran a hand through his hair.
What a nerd,
he mumbled under his breath, before grabbing some clothes and headed into the bathroom to change. If you could stare, so could he, right? He'd be lying to himself if he said he didn't notice the way your hips swayed when you walked, or how hot it was when you stood up to him with confidence. When he came out, you were already waiting, leaned up against the couch playing on your phone. You wore some boots that boosted your height a small amount, fitted jeans, a loose shirt, and hoodie, one similar to his own but a different color. He had to quickly derail his train of thought because it definitely wasn't going in the right direction. The crazy hormonal teenage phase miraculously skipped over him with how focused he remained on training. His natural stubbornness didn't help things either. Now, apparently, he was paying the price for it without those distractions around. Bakugou bit the inside of his cheek as you looked at him.
Hayaka,
he said, grabbing his own hoodie and heading towards the front door to keep from saying or doing anything stupid. His hand gripped around the door handle when he noticed you standing behind him, your own hand outstretched towards him, palm up. He looked at you confused, not understanding what you wanted, until he saw a brief flash of disappointment in your eyes as you started to pull your hand away. Wait, did you want to hold his hand? It's okay if you don't, you started, but he didn't let you finish before he grabbed your hand and yanked you forward as determination flooded through him. What, he could kiss you on your bathroom floor but felt embarrassed holding your hand?
Stupid,
he thought, even though he was sure the tips of his ears were pink. Your skin felt softer than his, palms free from scars and calluses due to years of intense exercise and quirk use. He'd never held anyone's hand before, not like this anyway. The way you bit your lip and smiled at him like a sap made it worth it. Oh, hold on. You opened up the utility closet next to the door and grabbed an umbrella. Just in case. Maybe he felt self-conscious because his hands were naturally sweaty due to his quirk, but you luckily didn't seem to mind as the two of you walked outside towards the park he used as his temporary training area. Clouds lined the sky, so your idea to bring your umbrella wasn't unfounded. The air held a slight chill, the ground damp and marred with scattered puddles, while humidity and the smell of fresh rainfall filled his nose. He listened to you talk about the city, how long you'd lived here, and listed off some of your favorite spots to visit or people watch. After a while, he got used to the feeling of your hand in his and didn't give it a second thought. Other people had the same idea to enjoy a respite from the rain, one couple pushing a stroller while a group of teenagers attempted to climb one of the taller trees. I really need to come out here more, Sometimes I get so wrapped up in work and dumb stuff that I don't just take a relaxing walk.
This is where I've been exercising. It's fairly quiet, which is good.
He commented as the two of you continued to walk. Some odd movement up ahead caused him to slow his pace and narrow his eyes. What's wrong? Bakugou ignored you and focused instead on the struggling people just off the path of the sidewalk, until one person stumbled and fell while the other bolted in the opposite direction. He slipped out of your hand and started running, your calls after him falling on deaf ears as hero mode took over. You watched nervously as Bakugou bolted from 0 to 100 in terms of speed to sprint after the asshole who was about to seriously regret their life decisions, while you jogged towards the person who fell. As you got closer, it seemed to be an older woman who looked terrified and shaken. "Oh my god, are you okay? Can you stand?" You asked in a panic, while extending a hand to try and help her up. The woman groaned, but grabbed onto you as you helped her up, her flower-patterned dress now dirty with damp earth. You glanced up just in time to see Bakugou literally tackle the guy to the ground in the distance, roll perfectly, and land back on his feet while the poor sap struggled on the ground. It was one of the hottest things you'd ever seen someone do with your own 2 eyes. As you talked to the woman, you found out a man came up behind her and attempted to take her purse, but being a stubborn old bat, as she kindly put it, she resisted and put up a fight. He took her bag and left her in the mud. It wasn't long before a security guard that roamed around the park came jogging up to Bakugou and the robber in the distance to assess the situation. Bakugou pointed up towards the two of you, since you assumed he couldn't understand the uniformed guard. Bakugou followed the guard, who dragged the purse snatcher behind him as they walked towards you, the thief covered in dirt and leaves and twigs after literally getting tackled into the ground. Bakugou looked no worse for wear aside from his muddy shoes.
"Excuse me, ma'am. Can you tell me exactly what happened?"
The guard asked towards the older woman. She pointed a shaky finger in the robber's direction.
"I was just walking, and this hooligan tried to take my bag. I'm not as young and spry as I used to be, but I fought him off. How rude!"
She took her bag back and promptly smacked him with it, but your attention was focused solely on Bakugou, who walked around the involved individuals and back to your side, hands in his pockets as though he hadn't just thwarted a burglary. He had no defense, so the purse snatcher kept his mouth shut, but a dirty sneer seemed permanently etched into his face. He shrunk back slightly when Bakugou glared his way, though.
"You should thank this man. He, performed quite a stunt back there."
The officer shuffled his feet, silently admitting his own lack of acrobatic skills. The old woman tore her eyes away from the burglar, her expression shifting almost immediately to one that oozed pleasant grandma energy.
"Oh, thank you, young man. This younger generation is so kind,"
she said, taking his strong hand in hers and shaking it as Bakugou stood awkwardly and just let it happen. She then turned to you, and one wrinkly eye gave you a subtle wink and a gentle pat on the arm.
"Thank you for your help, too. Treat this one right, young lady. He's a keeper."
At her words, you turned bright red.
Yes, thank you."
Bakugou cut his eyes to you questioningly, probably wondering what this woman said that made you look so embarrassed. After the officer walked away with the burglar in tow, and the old woman continued on her slow path down the sidewalk, you took a deep breath to calm yourself after that wave of excitement before grabbing up your umbrella once more and continuing on your walk with Bakugou beside you. I have to say, that was really impressive. Didn't anticipate anything like that happening today, you said with a light chuckle. Bakugou looked at you like you were crazy.
"That? Easy. I've taken down villains who could destroy entire city blocks. That was pitifully simple,"
he stated with only a slight air of arrogance as a way to downplay his actions, but he mesmerized you anyway. Well, I thought it was amazing. You hooked your hand around his elbow since his hands were stuffed into his pockets. He didn't pull away, and when you glanced up at him through your eyelashes, You swore his eyes lit up and his chest puffed up slightly at the obvious stroke to his pride and ego. Maybe telling him it was sexy too would have been overkill. He was used to the awe and groveling thrown his way back home, numbness taking over at some point as he went through the motions day in and day out. But here, everything he did was outside of the norm, and he'd be damned if the admirable look you gave him didn't spur him on to keep talking. It reminded him of Friday night and how you sat on the edge of your seat as he retold stories that had nearly slipped his memory from how mundane they seemed. Bakugou jumped into yet another one while the two of you walked, continuing the trend of impressing you with his feats of heroism. You really are a great hero, Bakugou. You have every right to be proud. When it came to strangers and the press, their statements usually rang hollow, and Bakugou brushed them off without much thought. However, when they came from someone he gave a damn about and respected, All Might, for example, he generally deflected and chalked it up to luck. Slowly but surely you were inching your way into this second category. Eventually, the sun started to set and he realized how quickly time passed while doing something as simple as walking with you in the park and found that, surprisingly, he didn't mind it at all. Being outside was better than being stuck inside, at least. Hey, my phone's starting to die, so we should probably head back, you said. When it was done translating, you stuffed your phone into your pocket and the two of you wandered back towards the direction of your apartment. About halfway there, the distinct sound of rolling thunder echoed overhead. Shit, you mumbled, while looking up at the sky. He could already feel a drop or two land on his face. As soon as the two of you jogged out of the park, the rain had started pouring down once more, but luckily you had the foresight to bring your umbrella. Bakugou held it above the two of you since he was taller as the sky turned dark and the mud on his shoes from earlier was scrubbed away by the deepening puddles in the sidewalk. By the time you both made it back to your apartment, both of you were halfway soaked as the rain decided to drift along in the wind. The umbrella could only help so much. Even so, you were laughing as you fished your keys out of your pocket to open the door as Bakugou removed his soaked shoes. It was then he noticed how your damp clothes clung to you, and averted his eyes from staring before you took notice. Closing the door behind you, Bakugou shook his hair out like a wet dog, while you yelled at him. Oh my god, stop, you weirdo! The smile gave you away that you weren't really mad, so he didn't care. He watched you plug up your phone as he shuffled past you into the bathroom for a much-needed hot shower and a change of clean, dry clothes. When you heard the shower running, you decided to change into some pajamas and put up your clean clothes from earlier while you waited for the bathroom to free up. Hate hanging up clothes, you mumbled, stuffing things into your closet and drawers before waiting outside the bathroom. A hot shower sounded like a blessing. As Bakugou came out, steam pouring from the room behind him, he was still pulling his shirt down, and you glimpsed a bit of skin you weren't expecting. While you knew he was ripped, you still gasped out of shock because, damn, how could you not? A long scar also ran from under the hem of his pajama pants up his torso in a zigzag of healed-over tissue. If your brain had been working properly, you would have wondered what, or who, caused such damage. His ruby eyes settled on your pitiful attempt not to blush and avert eye contact. Maybe boosting his ego so much earlier hadn't entirely worn off because he just smirked that stupidly handsome smirk of his and leaned against the doorframe, daring you to come closer. When you finally resigned to move forward, he blocked you, stepping in the same direction you did. This back and forth continued until you managed to duck under one of his arms and slam the door shut at his back. Nice abs, hot stuff! You yelled through the door, knowing he couldn't understand you, but you heard him laugh anyway on pure assumption. You let the warm water cascade over you, shrugging off the chill from the rain outside. So much had changed in the past 24 hours. It felt like a surreal dream. A song erupted from the fluttering butterflies in your chest, even knowing Bakugou could hear you outside. And by the time you finished your shower, you felt lighter than air. Walking out of the bathroom, you found Bakugou had already started dinner, various spices and ingredients strewn about on the counter. I could get used to this, you thought selfishly as you grabbed your phone, still plugged up to the charger, and leaned against the faux marble. You really needed to dig more into that dictionary to better communicate with him without your phone. What are you making?
You'll see,
he replied ominously, before turning back around to focus on the stove. You really don't have to keep cooking, you know. Bakugou just scoffed as though to suggest otherwise was ridiculous.
Too bad. Don't complain,
he quipped over his shoulder. You hummed and shook your head at his dramatics before grabbing one of the novels you'd started reading and plopping down on the couch to let him concentrate. If you were honest with yourself, though, your mind wandered after only skimming a few pages. Listening to all his hero stories at the park made you wonder if he was uncomfortable with the inability to use his quirk for so long. It was second nature to people in his universe, right? An extension of himself. Did it feel like an invisible third hand tied behind his back? Were there side effects of withholding use of his quirk for almost 2 weeks? Not to mention that it directly connected Bakugou to his home. You wondered if there was something you could do to help in some way if he was stuck here for who knew how long. But how? You were unaware that Bakugou often glanced up from focusing on dinner to stare at you curiously.
Oi, food.
Bakugou called from the kitchen when everything was finally done. When he woke up this morning, he wasn't sure what he was in for after everything that transpired the previous night, but today had been good overall. Some pangs of home hit him earlier without the turmoil of his feelings weighing him down. But somehow, and he was silently grateful for this, you managed to ease his frustrations by just being you. He plated everything evenly, maybe a bit OCD, but it would have bugged him otherwise, and set the dishes on the table while you grabbed your phone and sat down in your usual seat next to him. "Oh, it smells good," you praised. It was dangerous to get accustomed to your near-constant shower of compliments, but he didn't feel like shutting it down quite yet.
I know,
he replied with a shrug, and you just rolled your eyes. Yeah, I'm sure everyone knows the great Bakugou is a multi-talented perfectionist. You got a swift kick in the leg for that one with the heel of his foot. The two of you ate in relative silence, Bakugou glancing over to see that stupid wiggle you did in your chair every time you took a bite. Have you ever taken cooking lessons? I feel like if you weren't a hero, you could own a restaurant or something. You could probably do anything you wanted. He nearly snorted at the question.
Cooking isn't hard. It's just putting shit together and experimenting with flavor profiles.
It was just common sense, really, but judging by your eye roll, you didn't buy it. Ah, yes, super easy. Is there anything you aren't good at? Bakugou hesitated because, honestly, he truly was a perfectionist and excelled at most things he tried. It did nothing to knock his ego down a peg, but there was one thing he knew for sure he was terrible at.
I can't sing worth a shit, so you win that one.
Kirishima sounded like a dying animal and was by far the worst singer of their friend group, but Bakugou followed close behind, which was why he adamantly refused to participate in karaoke. You glanced shyly down at your food, mimicking your embarrassment from this morning when he brought up your singing. It was honestly cute how one small compliment made you so humble, but a change in subject was in order.
What were you thinking about earlier?
He asked, never one to hold back what was on his mind. You looked up with furrowed brows. Huh?
When you were reading, it was obvious you were distracted.
He watched you swallow another bite of food, more slowly than you needed before answering. Oh, just mulling over some ideas is all. Bakugou quirked up an eyebrow at your answer. He expected you to elaborate, but instead, your expression shifted from happy one moment to contemplative the next. as though whatever rolled around in that head of yours weighed you down. This was another thing Bakugou was terrible at: comforting people. He'd gotten better at it, especially during rescue missions, but Kirishima and Uraraka oozed helpful and approachable energy, so he usually left the tasks up to them while he just kicked ass. Maybe you didn't want to talk about it, and Bakugou wasn't one to pry into someone's personal business. If you didn't want to share, he wouldn't make you unless the situation seemed dire. Another change in subject was in order.
Oh, I know. Fuck it, why not? Oi,
He said, grabbing your attention.
let's take a picture after dinner.
Almost immediately, your eyes lit up and he knew he'd made the right choice. What, really? You want to?
I don't lie. Yeah, I mean it.
The smile you threw his way could have lit up a city block, and he'd be damned if he didn't admit it was captivating. The fact that you actually wanted a picture with him to remind you of his time here made him feel warmer than he cared to admit. He also appreciated the fact that you seemed easy to please. Your straightforwardness meant he didn't need to crack his head open to figure you out. After you scraped your plate clean, you, again, argued with him about the damn dishes. It was becoming a routine, a never-ending argument.
Let me wash the fucking dishes already.
You had one hand in the sink while the other tried uselessly to shove him out of the way, but he was easily strong enough to hold his ground. I don't mind helping. With a huff, Bakugou tossed a soapy spoon in the sink before swooping forward and picking you up, slinging you over his shoulder like a yelling sack of potatoes. What the hell? Put me down! He'd carried enough people to safety to know how to hold someone in just about every position. Bakugou had one arm around your legs to keep you from kicking, and the other around your midsection as you wiggled at his back while screeching and laughing. Bakugou walked around the counter and set you down on the couch, admiring your messy hair and stunned silence before strutting back into the kitchen to finish the dishes. He never lost in a fight, no matter how small, even if he won through incredibly petty means. I won't give up, you shouted from the couch while trying to get a grip on yourself after that flustering situation. If he could pick you up like that all the time, you'd have no complaints no matter how unfair it was. Holding hands made him blush, but that was about it as far as you'd observed. How was he so composed all the time? Standing up from the couch, you slid into the bathroom, avoiding Bakugou's smirk from the kitchen. You wanted to brush your teeth and fix your hair if you really wanted to take a picture together. Walking back out, Bakugou was already on the couch, presumably waiting for you. A bit of shyness overcame you at the moment, but you reminded yourself that he could be gone by tomorrow, and you'd have let this keepsake slip away. And damn it, if you could make out with him on your bathroom floor, you could take a picture without looking too flustered. Grabbing your phone, you sat next to him, your leg brushing against his for a split second. Can we take 2 pictures? You asked a bit selfishly. What if the first one turned out bad? What if you blinked? A few scenarios ran through your head before you came up with a devious plan, but he'd need to agree for it to work. Bakugou shrugged it off.
So long as it doesn't take forever.
You have to try and smile, though. He groaned and rolled his eyes, but you could tell it was all for show. Leaning your head on his shoulder, you posed, smiled, and snapped the first picture. It was awkward, but there was no going back now. Looking at your screen, it wasn't half bad at all, but you still wanted one more. Bakugou honestly didn't mind the pictures so much, but posing for them always felt fake and forced. With you, though, it wasn't agitating. If he could suffer through magazine interviews and incapacitate villains, then he could take a damn picture, right? He'd never taken a couple's
Fuck.
As soon as the word couple entered his brain, you kissed him on the cheek and snapped the picture, catching him in a moment of stunned surprise like a deer caught in headlights. His flustered face now stared back at him from your phone screen.
You sneaky shit.
Your laughing brought him out of his head. You look so cute, you teased, poking him in the cheek. He growled on instinct, not used to feeling self-conscious and especially not having proof of it. His brain flipping on a stupid switch was becoming increasingly common around you. If you don't like it, I can delete it. I don't want you to feel weird about it or anything, you said, his face apparently giving away his agitation. It was just a dumb picture, and you looked so genuine that it spurred him on.
It's fine. Keep it.
Bakugou shifted his gaze off to the side, but didn't miss the smile you gave with his response.
I'm such a fucking sap. What the fuck?
The two of you sat there for a moment before you let out a sigh. Thanks for indulging me. I think today was a really good day. I had fun. Hopefully it wasn't too boring for you, since we didn't really do anything exciting. Bakugou thought about the day from this morning to now, and honestly couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so light. This was new and unfamiliar territory, but it didn't scare him. If anything, it made him excited to explore whatever the hell this was. He found himself trying to get you to smile, and when you did, he committed the sight to memory. The roller coaster of emotions he'd felt while growing closer to you did not bode well the longer this dragged on, but for now, he didn't care. He wanted to step into the warmth you emitted, perched on the edge to avoid the cold that nipped at his heels.
Yeah, it was a good day,
he admitted. He either threw himself fully into something or saw no point in pursuing it at all, so why should this be any different? The way your eyes lit up told him it was worth it. The two of you decided to relax for the rest of the evening and watch a movie you picked out on Netflix. It was subtitled, so you could read it and Bakugou could listen in his native language. You managed to wiggle your way into cuddling with him again, his grumbling a performance than anything else. Of all the things you pictured him doing, cuddling with you on the couch while the two of you watched a movie was not on your imaginary list of hypothetical scenarios. It truly did feel like an excellent end to the day. Your phone was off, but Bakugou chimed in anyway, gesturing angrily whenever some terribly acted fight scene came on, probably blurting with complete confidence that he could do better. By the time the last line in the movie was spoken, you could feel the heaviness of your eyelids as you pulled back out your phone. Tomorrow's Monday. Back to work, I guess. You groaned, thinking about leaving the weekend behind to slog through another day at the office.
Do you not like your job?
He asked, while trying to stifle his own yawn. You just shrugged and leaned against his side. It's fine. I mean, I'm good at what I do, and people rely on me. But sometimes things piss me off, like when assholes try to take credit for my work. I don't want to be there forever, but it's a stepping stone. Bakugou rarely thought about civilian life, because he knew nothing else other than hero work. He'd never had another job. Working in an office all day sounded like torture if he was honest, which was why he delegated all his paperwork to an assistant at the agency.
You should look for something new then.
The solution seemed simple. Find something you actually liked doing, or at least a place that valued your work. He could tell you weren't a slacker, and probably threw yourself into whatever you needed to do just like Bakugou did.
No use being someplace you don't want to be.
Yeah, that's true. You're happy as a hero, right? The question seemed so ludicrous that he almost laughed. Bakugou answered with unwavering confidence.
Yes, I wouldn't tolerate anything else. It's what I always wanted to be, and I'm fucking good at it.
It wasn't a lie. He was a top hero and would rather chew glass than change his career path. He missed it terribly. From what you've told me, you're more than just good. you replied, referencing his earlier boasting. Chuckling softly, Bakugou nudged you when he saw your eyes flutter closed.
Go to sleep.
It was more an order than a suggestion. I don't want to, you whined, attempting to push even closer to him, but, as nice as it felt, you'd never win at a game of stubbornness with him.
You want to feel like shit tomorrow? No? Then go to sleep. I don't want to hear you complain about it.
He wasn't going to say he'd be here tomorrow, neither of you knowing what the morning might bring. Waving a hand in the air like a white flag, you finally gave in. All right, fine. I'll be responsible, I guess. You stretched your arms above your head and rolled off the couch and into the bathroom. When you came out, you yawned, and he found this sleepy face of yours kind of adorable. Seated on the couch, Bakugou was surprised when you walked close and swooped down for a peck on his cheek, longer than the one before. He turned his head and stared into those glistening eyes of yours, and both of you had the same idea, meeting in the middle for a final goodnight kiss. Your lips were soft and warm, and you tasted vaguely of mint, sweet and light and different from the passionate energy of the afternoon. Bakugou cherished the simple sensation, his fingers pausing from picking at a stray thread on the seam of the couch. Good night, Bakugou, you said softly, pulling away. He didn't need an app to understand. You'd wished him good night enough times at this point.
Oyasumi.
You padded towards your room behind him, but looked back over your shoulder and he watched, committing the sight to memory. For what purpose, he didn't know, but he wasn't about to think too hard on it. Not now. When you finally disappeared behind your closed door, Bakugou ran a hand through his hair and filled his lungs with the smell of your apartment before letting the breath out slowly. Everything was new and experimental and thrilling in an oddly comfortable sort of way. You continually surprised him and kept him on his toes. He'd fallen into a years-long routine at home, and while he loved it and missed it, this wasn't so bad, really, so long as it was temporary. After he brushed his teeth and settled back on the couch, he really missed his damn bed, but oh well. He glanced up in the darkness at your door before closing his eyes to the moonlight and wondered what he'd wake up to. As soon as Bakugou saw your bedroom door close, he promptly started. Oh God! Oh no, he's calling. Okay, stop. Go away. Hold on. No, go away. Oh my God. Whoops. Silence in the studio, please. Oh my God. Jeez. About halfway, there, the distinct sound of rolling thunder only happens when it's raining.
You should look for something new then.
Fucking hell.